Today we are on page 226 in our Spark Bible, and we are continuing our story about Jesus, first as a baby and then as a small boy. Right now we are going to read a story called Simeon and Anna. There was an old man, he was a very old man, named Simeon, who lived in Jerusalem. Simeon loved God. He knew God's words and believed God's promises. God made a promise to Simeon. God promised Simeon that he would not die until he saw the person God was sending to save the whole world. Wow, what a promise. One day, Simeon went to the temple. The temple was very, very crowded. Many people were there. Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus were there too. Simeon looked around. When Simeon saw baby Jesus, he got very excited. Could Jesus be the one? Simeon pointed at the baby Jesus and asked, "May I hold him?" "Carefully," Mary said. Simeon carefully picked Jesus up and began praising God. Simeon said, "God, you have kept your promise. You have let me see the one you promised to send. He will save the whole world." Mary and Joseph were amazed. Was Jesus part of God's promise to save the whole world? "What does this mean?" Joseph asked. "How can this be?" Simeon talked about God's promise with Mary and Joseph, and then he blessed Jesus and his family. An old woman named Anna was also at the temple. Anna lived at the temple. She worshiped God and prayed day and night. When Anna saw Jesus, she rushed over. She knew Jesus was special. Would Mary let Anna hold Jesus too? "Yes," Mary said. Anna began praising God too. She told everyone who would listen, "Jesus is the one that God has promised to send. Jesus will save the world." Then Anna handed Jesus back to Joseph. "Take good care of him," Anna said. "Oh, we will," Joseph said. "We will." What an exciting day. When Mary and Joseph finished at the temple, they took Jesus home to Nazareth. Jesus grew up in Nazareth. He became strong and wise, and God was always with him. Oh, boys and girls, do you remember what Jesus did when he was in Nazareth as he grew up? He was a carpenter, wasn't he? He grew strong and wise, and he was able to build many things. But that was not really what his calling was. His calling as the Son of God was to save the world. I wonder how Simeon and Anna knew that. My goodness. Hi, boys and girls. Well, we have certainly had an exciting time together, haven't we, reading these stories about Jesus when he was born and when he was a baby. But now, years have passed, and our next story about Jesus is whenever he is a boy. He has spent all of these years growing up in Nazareth with his parents and his brothers and sisters. Now he is a young boy. The story that we're reading today is called The Boy at the Temple, and it is on page 230 in your Spark Bible. Every year, Jesus' family traveled from their home in Nazareth to Jerusalem to celebrate the festival of Passover. Jesus loved going to the festival. He loved the crowds of people, and he loved the noise and the bustle of activity. And he loved spending time in the temple. One year, when Jesus was 12, the festival began like any other. Joseph, Mary, and Jesus enjoyed the sights and the sounds and the activities of the festival together. And when the festival was over, Mary and Joseph joined others from Nazareth for the long walk back home. But when the group stopped to camp at the end of the first day, Mary and Joseph could not find Jesus anywhere. Imagine how they must have felt. They probably thought they had lost him. Everyone thought he had been walking with someone else in the group. "Jesus!" yelled his parents. "Jesus! Oh, Jesus, where are you?" Mary and Joseph were frantic. They quickly walked back to Jerusalem looking for him. They searched the city high and low for 3 whole days until they found Jesus in the temple. Mary and Joseph were surprised at what they saw. Jesus was in the temple, talking with teachers more than twice his age. He was just a boy, but he could talk about God with a room full of grown-ups. Could you do that? The teachers in the temple were impressed with him and with what Jesus knew. Mary and Joseph were proud, but they were still a bit angry with Jesus. "Jesus, why weren't you with us? We have been looking all over for you," Mary and Joseph exclaimed. They were really worried, weren't they? Jesus replied, "Why were you looking for me? Didn't you understand that I was in my Father's house?" Mary and Joseph didn't understand, but with that, they gathered their belongings and began the long walk back home. What do you think Mary and Joseph thought when Jesus said he was in his Father's house? Now there's a question. Our next story, boys and girls, is found on page 234 in your Spark Bible. And look at this funny picture. Oh my goodness gracious. That whole page is filled up with a picture of a man, and he's about to eat a bug. I wonder who he is. Let's find out. Oh, I bet you already knew. It's John the Baptist. John was an unusual man. He had lots of hair and a long beard. His clothes looked like his face. They too were furry and hairy. His clothes were made of camel's hair and held together with a leather belt. John ate strange foods, including wild honey and locusts. It's a kind of a grasshopper. Ooh, yucky. Ugh. God gave John an important job. His job was to tell people that Jesus was coming and to help them get ready to believe what Jesus would teach them. John knew the things Jesus would tell people. They were the most important things in the whole world. When he taught people, John stood by the river and yelled, "Hey, all of you out there! Tell God you're sorry for your sins. Turn your life around and act in ways that are good and honest." Then he would turn to another group and shout, "Are you listening? This is important. Jesus is coming. He is the Messiah. He will save all of us." Day after day, John continued teaching, preaching, and crying out so people would listen. Many people came to hear what John had to say about Jesus. They were rich and they were poor people, honest and dishonest people, nice and not so nice people. Just like today, all kinds of people. Some people listened to John. Some people didn't. Some people said, "That man must be a messenger from God." Some said, "He is really odd. I'm getting out of here." Many people believed the message John told. Those people said, "I am sorry for my sins. I want God to forgive me." To each, John said, "God does forgive you." He baptized those people in the river. The people started calling him John the Baptist. John the Baptist had done a good job. The people were ready to hear the message Jesus would bring.